If your furnace is leaking water, here is the part that catches almost everyone off guard. On a lot of the furnaces installed today, making water is not a malfunction. It is the furnace doing its job exactly right. These high-efficiency units pull so much heat out of the burning gas that the exhaust actually cools down and turns to water inside the machine on purpose. So the water itself is usually not your problem. The problem is that the water is supposed to drain away quietly, and right now it is not. Something in the drain path is clogged, broken, or backed up, and the overflow is what you are mopping off the floor. That is the reassuring part, because a drainage problem is one of the cheapest things that can go wrong with a furnace. Most of the time you are looking at a clogged plastic trap or a slimed up hose, and the fix costs you a jug of vinegar and 20 minutes. Only a couple of the causes need a professional, and I will tell you exactly which ones those are so you do not pay for a service call you did not need. But before you touch anything, you have to answer one question, because it splits this whole problem in half. Go look at the pipe that carries the exhaust out of your furnace. There are only two kinds. If it is white plastic PVC pipe running out through a wall or the roof, you have a high-efficiency furnace, and that furnace makes water by design. Your leak is almost certainly in the condensate drain system, and almost certainly a cheap fix. If instead the exhaust is a metal pipe, usually galvanized steel heading up into a chimney, you have a standard furnace, and here is the important part. A standard furnace does not make water at all, so if there is water around a metal vented furnace, the furnace is not the source. Something else nearby is leaking onto it, and we will get to those. Either way, do these two things first. Shut the furnace off at the thermostat, or flip its breaker if the water is anywhere near the electrical side. Then soak up the water with towels or a shop vac. I am not saying that to be tidy. Standing water sitting against the cabinet rusts the metal, and if it reaches the control board, that board is one of the more expensive parts in the whole furnace to replace. So kill the power and dry it out before you go hunting for the cause. Let us start with the high-efficiency furnace, the white PVC one, because that is where most of these leaks come from. The number one cause, by a wide margin, is a clogged condensate trap. Somewhere under or beside your furnace, there is a small plastic piece, sometimes a U-shaped bend, sometimes a little clear or white box. That trap catches the water coming off the heat exchanger and routes it toward a floor drain or a pump. The water it carries is slightly acidic, and over a season or two it grows a layer of slime, algae, and dust that eventually plugs the trap solid. When that happens, the water has nowhere to go, so it rises up and pours out the top. If your furnace is running and a puddle is spreading from the base, this is your first suspect. To clear it with the power already off, pull the trap loose or disconnect the drain hose. Take a photo first so you remember how it goes back together. Flush it out with equal parts white vinegar and warm water until it runs clear. The fastest trick is to put a wet/dry shop vac on the end of the drain line and just suck the clog straight out. When you reattach the trap, pour a cup of water back into it so it is primed. That water seal is what stops combustion gases from sneaking back up the drain, so do not skip it. Right next to the trap is the second cause, the drain hose itself. That flexible tube running from the furnace down to the trap can clog with the same slime, or it can kink, or it can sag into a low loop that holds water like a dam. Pull it, flush it, and route it so it runs steadily downhill with no belly in it. If it is cracked, replace it. New tubing is a few dollars at any hardware store. And while you are down there, make sure the floor drain the water empties into is not itself backed up, because a clogged floor drain will flood the furnace just as fast as a clogged trap will. The third cause shows up only in homes where the furnace sits below the drain or too far from one. In that case, the water cannot flow out by gravity, so there is a small condensate pump doing the lifting, a little box with a motor and a thin discharge tube climbing up to a drain. This is the one that fools people. A pump like a little giant runs fine for about 4 years. Then the plastic float inside gums up and sticks in the down position, and the motor stops getting the signal to switch on. So the reservoir quietly fills and spills a little onto the floor every cycle. You wipe it up, it is back the next morning, And you can lose a week blaming the furnace before you ever think to lift the lid on the little humming box next to it. Open the pump, clean the reservoir, and free the float. If the motor is genuinely dead, a replacement pump runs $50 to $100, and you can swap it yourself if you are comfortable, or about $250 to $440 installed by a pro. These pumps are basically a wear item, so if yours is 5 or 6 years old, replacing it before it floods the floor again is money well spent. The fourth cause is the one that actually needs a professional, and it is the cracked inducer assembly or secondary heat exchanger. All that acidic condensate spends years sitting against metal, and eventually it can rust or crack the parts it touches. When that happens, water escapes inside the cabinet even though your drain system is perfectly clear. The tell is simple. You clean the trap, the hose runs free, the pump works, and there is still water inside. At that point, it is time to call someone. A cracked heat exchanger does not just leak water, it can leak combustion gases, including carbon monoxide, into your air. So this is not a part to wait on. And here is the blunt truth about that repair. If a technician quotes you a new heat exchanger on a furnace that is 15 or 20 years old, that is not really a repair. That is a new furnace wearing a disguise because the part and the labor often cost most of what a whole new unit would. On an older furnace, that quote is usually your signal to price out a replacement instead. So that covers the high efficiency furnace. Now the standard furnace with the metal exhaust pipe, where the water is coming from somewhere else entirely. The most common culprit is your air conditioner. The indoor cooling coil, the evaporator, usually sits right inside the furnace cabinet or just above it. In summer, that coil pulls moisture out of your air and drips it into a pan that drains away through its own line. If that air conditioner drain line clogs, or the pan cracks or rusts through, or the coil freezes into a block of ice and then melts all at once, the water lands right on top of your furnace. People see water at the furnace and blame the furnace, when the real source is the air conditioner sharing its space. The giveaway is timing. If it only leaks when the cooling is running and never when you are heating, you are chasing an air conditioner problem, not a furnace problem. Clear that drain line, replace a cracked pan, and if the coil is freezing, start with the simplest cause, a dirty air filter choking the airflow. Swap the filter, let the ice thaw, and if it freezes up again, you are likely low on refrigerant, which is a pro fix. The second outside source is a whole house humidifier. If you have one, it is that box bolted onto your ductwork with its own little water supply line and drain. A clogged pad, a cracked or loose supply line, or a plugged humidifier drain will run water down the side of the furnace and pool at the base. Check whether the water is actually coming from that box up on the duct rather than the furnace itself. The fixes are easy. Replace the water panel, which runs $15 to $30, tighten or replace the supply line, and clear the drain. And turn the humidifier off in the summer when you do not need it anyway. The last one is less common but worth knowing. A standard furnace vented into a chimney that is oversized, cold, or shared with a water heater can let its exhaust cool down enough to condense inside the metal vent, and that water drips back down into the furnace. It tends to be worse in very cold weather. This is not a flush it yourself job. It is a venting problem, and you want a pro to look at how the furnace is vented. So to pull it together, find your exhaust pipe first. White PVC means the furnace makes water on purpose and your leak is in the drain system, which is almost always a clog trap or hose you can clear yourself with vinegar and a shop vac, sometimes a tired condensate pump, and only rarely a cracked heat exchanger that calls for a pro. A metal pipe means the furnace is not the culprit and you are really looking at the air conditioner, a humidifier, or the venting. Whichever one you have, shut it down, dry it out, and work from the cheap and likely causes toward the expensive and rare ones. If you want to knock out the common fixes today, I have linked the basics in the description, the wet/dry shop vac, plain white vinegar for flushing the trap and drain line, a replacement condensate pump, and a humidifier water panel if that turns out to be your culprit. Grab what matches your furnace and you can very likely have this dried up and draining right by the end of the afternoon.